Happy Friday, Dog Nation. What a happy Friday it is. Georgia returning home on Saturday to take on the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Between the hedges, we're ready for that. A lot of preview of that on today's show. There's also an aspect of Georgia and its continued pursuit of a championship that I think is relevant today. We'll use the words of Nick Saban to help us kind of make sense of that. Big day as far as guests go. Jeff Sentel to talk UGA recruiting. Former Georgia quarterback David Greene will be on hand before the day is done, too. We'll talk to him about JT Daniels. David will also preview his big autograph signing taking place tomorrow evening at the UGA bookstore, along with the legendary former coach Vince Dooley. So we are jam-packed on a Friday. We are very glad to have you with us. It's DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Kroger, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Let me begin with a little bit of breaking news. This is not necessarily breaking, and it's maybe not even necessarily news, but it is important to me. Over the last 24 hours, I've been a little bit concerned. Hey, would Georgia-Mississippi State go off, and would the game be okay, just given the fact that Mississippi State's operating with very low numbers? Nathan Pickering, the defensive lineman, opted out earlier this week. Powers Warren, the son of Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren, has put his name in the transfer portal, and that's like more attrition off the Mississippi State roster. It seemed like they were in a situation where any positive test whatsoever might put Saturday's game in danger. There has been some additional reporting coming from the Mississippi State side of this, though, and those folks would know their situation in Starkville better than the people outside the bubble of Mississippi State football would. Apparently, the Powers Warren thing, and maybe you saw that, the Big Ten commissioner's son putting his name in the transfer portal, is actually not an impact on the current numbers available to Mississippi State, because Warren, I guess, has been hurt or not playing for some other reason maybe, but he's not been playing, he's not been available, so that's not an issue, and it sounds like so far so good in terms of Mississippi State making its way up 59 to Athens on Saturday to play this game against Georgia. So from that standpoint, we are feeling pretty good about all of this. And, of course, more on the game throughout the show. Jeff Sentel later to talk UGA recruiting. Former Georgia quarterback David Greene to talk JT Daniels before we're done today. So very busy in regards to guests. Let me begin this way, though, because I think that there are a lot of Georgia fans right now who are in the midst of trying to decide, what is the formula for Georgia to win a national championship? At one point in time, it looked like it might be one thing, and given the way that some of the big games have gone for the Dogs as of late, maybe now there's a metamorphosis in the mind of fans and maybe even with the program itself to say, well, actually, maybe the championship formula for Georgia is something a little bit different. Not the very physical, great with the running game, great with the defense, just enough passing game. Maybe that's not quite the championship formula for Georgia. Maybe it's something a little bit more reminiscent of what LSU did last year, what other teams have done around the country who've just gotten really high-powered with offense and, frankly, had just enough defense. So with that conversation already ongoing around Georgia football with Georgia fans, I thought the words last night from Nick Saban during his regular weekly radio show there in Tuscaloosa were kind of interesting. Interesting because of what Saban says, and interesting also because of Saban's track record, his background, the fact that he's the one who's using these words. This certainly gives you a lot of reason to pay very close attention. Let me show you this on the screen. Guy who covers Alabama football for AL.com, his name is Mike Rodak. He tweets this quote from Nick Saban's radio show last night. Here's Saban. I do think the days of playing great defense and winning are probably behind us in college football. Now, isn't that interesting? Saban saying that when it comes to great defense and the connection of great defense to winning, that might be over in the sport of college football. And obviously, Nick Saban's proof is in the pudding, at least in terms of what he's doing on the field. The Crimson Tide obviously have a very high-powered offense. So clearly, Nick Saban has tried to move his program in that direction. And a lot of Georgia fans are kind of seeing some of the same stuff going on, that, hey, Georgia supposedly has this great defense and the big games doesn't seem to show up. Georgia needs the kind of quarterback play, the kind of high-powered offense that everybody else has. That is a pretty common opinion among fans right now. However, let me pick a nit a little bit, though, with what Nick Saban says, at least the text of the quote as the reporter put it out on Twitter last night. No connection between great defense and winning. I'm not quite so sure that's true. What I think is true, though, is is that the way we define great defense probably needs to change. So-called great defense still matters, but the definition of great defense has probably altered over the years. For instance, Georgia holding Kentucky to 3 points in Lexington a few weeks ago is not an example of great defense because Georgia's not doing that against a great offense. And a lot of the stuff that Georgia did in 2019, limiting very meager, mediocre offenses to very few yards, very, very few points, that looks great statistically, but sometimes those great stats are not necessarily indicative of a great defense. I think the definition of great defense has changed. Great defense still matters, but this is what great defense is. It's a great player, a superstar type player making super plays. See, we used to define defense as what it prevented someone from doing. You keep them from scoring, you keep them from moving down the field. That's not what it is anymore. It's not about preventing someone else from doing something. It's about going out there and doing something yourself, making negative plays, getting those passes broken up that can turn into interceptions, getting the kinds of sacks that kind of can turn into turnovers and things like that. And with that in mind, I actually thought that something that Kirby Smart said this week was kind of interesting. He was asked about the recent penchant of Georgia cornerback Eric Stokes for getting defensive scores. Got one of those against Florida. Had done that already this season. Was a part of a defensive score last year against Tennessee. That Stokes just kind of has a little bit of an eye for getting involved and getting a defensive score for the Dogs. And Kirby Smart was asked this week, what's kind of behind that? How do you go out there and get those defensive scores? How does Stokes do that? Is that something that you coach up? And frankly, I thought Smart gave a pretty interesting answer to that. Let me let you hear this.
Well, I'd love to say that we emphasize it at practice and that's why it happens. But it typically, the defenses I've been around that score on defense are usually disruptive. It comes from a fumble, comes from a sack, comes from a, Monty strip sack fumble. I mean, the more disruptive you are and the more explosive players you have, the more opportunities you have to score on defense.
I think that's a really important word from Smart, the one that he uses over and over and over again there, disruptive. Great defense, I believe, still matters, but if your defense isn't disruptive, then you're really not great. If all you're doing is maintaining contain and playing it safe and not limiting, not giving up too many big plays and things like that, if you're a conservative defense, then eventually you'll get picked apart by Joe Burrow or Mac Jones. Unfortunately, now you have to add Kyle Trask to that list. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. The best quarterbacks in the country will eventually just pick apart to death a defense that simply wants to play a conservative and limit big plays and not give up any long plays. Eventually, that's just not going to withstand against the very best offense in the country. If you want to match up against them, you've got to be disruptive. And just as a quick example of this, I was very curious last night to watch the Thursday night football game between Arizona and Seattle. I thought that was, on paper, a great matchup. I'd seen the Sunday night game a couple of weeks ago, when Kyler Murray went head-to-head against Russell Wilson. I thought, wow, these are two most exciting quarterbacks in the sport battling each other. The rematch was something I was looking forward to. So I watched the game last night. And isn't it interesting that we are told that great defense doesn't connect itself to winning anymore, but look what happened last night. Exciting quarterback on the one side, Kyler Murray, exciting quarterback on the other side when it comes to Russell Wilson. Yet defense was a big story of this game last night. I thought maybe the most exciting player in the field for a lot of the game was Isaiah Simmons, the former Clemson product, running around. I think he had 9 tackles last night. Then when the game on the line, it's Carlos Dunlap. Seattle brings him in to provide a pass rush. He gives you a big pass rush in a key moment there, getting the sack on Murray to end the game. Total last night was 57. Game goes under the total because of the way that defense showed up. So even against dynamic offenses, dynamic quarterbacks, defense can still matter. But the defense, to use the word that Kirby Smart said, has to be disruptive. It can't just be, hey, we're going to limit bad teams to not very many yards, not very many points. Those may be looking like great stats, but it's not necessarily proof of a great defense. So with that in mind, I think defense still matters for Georgia as long as we are clear about what the definition of great defense is. Now, a couple things, as far as Saturday's game go, here's for a moment. The role of defense for Saturday, I think, is a pretty big deal. Obviously, Georgia's got a chance to stop a Mike Leach offense, the kind of thing that Georgia hasn't seen very much. We'll be paying very close attention to the Georgia defense, looking for a chance for retribution after giving up way more than it wanted to against Florida in the last game that it played. And also this, Dave Neal from the SEC Network joined us near the end of yesterday's show, and he was talking about what to expect from the other Bulldogs, the Maroon Bulldogs, on Saturday. And, we think of this game as solely about what Georgia might do offensively, what might be happening with all of that. But as Dave Neal mentioned on yesterday's show, don't forget, for as bad as Mississippi State's season has been, and at times as much as the offense has struggled, they've lost a bunch of games. Dave Neal reminded us yesterday, and he'll call the game on the SEC Network tomorrow, that the lack of success for Mississippi State this season has not necessarily been the Bulldog defense's fault. Here's Dave Neal on that.
This isn't a pushover defense. And I know they've had a couple of guys opt out, but they play this 3-3-5 defense that comes with pressure from areas that you don't really expect. Rocky Long, who was a longtime coach at San Diego State, mentored Mississippi State's defensive coordinator, Coach Arnett, who completely runs that same defense. And he's got dudes that can play. And I mean, as he said, we're not very deep in the secondary, but the guys we're throwing out there can play.
So that's Dave Neal saying, hey, don't forget, defense going to play a role in what happens on Saturday for Georgia and Mississippi State. Obviously, UGA fans understand that on the part of their own defense against Mike Leach's Bulldogs. And on the other side, for JT Daniels, who we expect to make a debut at quarterback, battling against this Mississippi State defense might actually be a pretty interesting matchup on that. All right, with that said, let me kind of shift gears to something completely different here quickly just for a moment. Speaking of JT Daniels, on the interview that Dave Neal did with us yesterday from the SEC Network, I thought that Neal did a great job of laying out the kind of storyline that we go into for Saturday. This is a more interesting game than sometimes you might expect for a team that has really very little chance of winning the SEC East. Mississippi State's got nothing at stake, it would seem, in the game. And yet there's a lot of attention on Georgia and Mississippi State on Saturday because of the possibility that JT Daniels will make his debut. And to hear Dave Neal talk yesterday, it's not just Georgia fans who feel that way. Dave said it should be all college football fans looking for a chance to see more of JT Daniels. Here's Dave Neal again.
JT Daniels came out of high school as this super, super talented quarterback at a great high school that's put out numerous NFL quarterbacks. So he comes from a great pedigree, had an outstanding year at USC. And a lot of people forget, he graduated high school early, didn't even play his senior year. So he's still a young guy. I want to see him play. I want to see him play in the SEC. So selfishly, I hope he's the guy, just because I think it'd be fun. But honestly, Kirby is not hinted one way or the other in terms of, hey, be prepared for this guy to run out. But I think you can read between the lines. I don't feel like JT's the guy.
So good stuff there from Dave Neal. A lot of Georgia fans hope that's the case. Maybe black jerseys, debut of JT Daniels. It sets up on Saturday night what could be a very fun night for UGA fans. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast, radio, streaming video show for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Kroger. Good to have you with us on all the platforms, the video, the radio, the podcast, everything else. And a big thanks to our friends at Kroger for making it all possible here today. We love them and glad to have them here. And don't forget, they are your spot for that perfect Thanksgiving meal. You can get all the tips and tricks you need to make the turkey taste great and everything else go really well. So here's a website you can check out to find out more about that. It's Kroger.com/Thanksgiving. That's Kroger.com/Thanksgiving. All the tips you need for a great Thanksgiving meal, you can get that online. Make the turkey taste the way it's supposed to, the fixings to kind of go with that. Make it a perfect day for you and your family. Kroger.com/Thanksgiving. You can get a lot more on that from them. We are very busy on today's show. It's former Georgia quarterback David Greene. A little later on, it's Jeff Sentel to talk some UGA recruiting here in just a moment. Let me set up my conversation with Jeff Sentel, though, by doing this. Let's go around the doghouse delivered today by our friends at Marco's Pizza. And I have heard from a lot of you about the reaction to Smile Mondon, the five-star linebacker committing to Georgia yesterday. And the basic gist of what I've gotten from some of you is that my reaction live to seeing that on video, I was sitting here in our DawgNation World Headquarters studios when Mondon kind of, pulled the trick on all of us, lifting up the LSU hat to reveal a second Georgia hat, and that's what he put on. I have been told by some of you that was a little bit of a throwback to some of the great moments in recent DawgNation recruiting history and my reaction to some of that good news. So I thought we might go back through memory lane here a little bit to see how the Mondon reaction from me kind of compares to some of the other stuff over the past. Let me start with this one. This was a couple years ago. We were still back in our old studio, which was upstairs from where we are right now. But in the midst of the show, we had found out, or at least I found out on the spot, that George Pickens was making the flip from Auburn to UGA. Connor, who's actually producing us here today, came in the studio to let me know that. Let's kind of set the stage for we want to go with Mondon by going back and hearing my reaction to the Pickens news. Let's take a quick listen to that. George Pickens, this is official? This is real. George Pickens has flipped to Georgia. As we're doing this live right now, George Pickens, the 5-star wide receiver, we're just finding out about this. George Pickens has flipped to the University of Georgia. I love I'm asking Connor, is this real? As if Connor would interrupt the show, completely throw it off the rails by giving me news like that was not real. So that was the George Pickens thing. You know, a little more subdued, kind of in the pocket in terms of the reaction to that. The one, though, that I still get a lot of grief for was on an episode of Before the Hedges presented by Kroger when Jeff Sentel revealed to me that, by the way, a couple of blasts from the past names here, Jordan Burch, Zachary Evans would be taking visits to UGA, and he kind of reveals this on the screen. This is kind of one of those unbridled moments of excitement for me that I still get a bunch of grief for. Let's let you hear this from the recent past. By way of the magic of streaming video, let me show you some of these names on your screen here, and we'll talk about a few of these right now. Oh, are you kidding me off the top here? You're going to tell me that Jordan Burch is indeed coming, and maybe even more interesting than that, I would say definitely more interesting than that, you're going to tell me that Zachary Evans is going to be at the cookout this weekend? That's a Stop the Presses piece of news right there, Jeff. It's the ooh. That's the thing that people always going to give me a little bit of a hard time for. That's kind of been kind of called the B.A. chortle a little bit. And some people were saying that my reaction to the Wednesday news from Smile Mondon, you know, when he revealed the Georgia hat underneath, might have also kind of crossed the line into chortle territory. If you're watching a video, you can see this. If you're listening, you can hear it. Let's listen to me on the Mondon News to see how close to a chortle we get on this. This is from Wednesday.
For the next 3 or 4 years, I'll be taking my talents to
So I don't know if you quite got chortle on that. I was definitely very entertained by the maneuver. I had not seen that one before, lifting up the LSU hat, going straight to the Georgia hat. Connor, I know we're running late, but hop on the mic here for a moment. How close to chortle do you think I got on the Mondon thing right there?
Not all that close. Not all that close.
You don't think so?
No.
I felt like I was at least kind of in the moment, entertained. I thought the hat was actually pretty good on that.
It felt more like a Skeletor laugh, like an evil laugh kind of thing, more so than a full-on chortle.
Listen, I got no problem with a little recruiting histrionics every now and then. I don't mind a little theatrics with that. I thought that I certainly thought that Smile Mondon did a pretty good job on that. So for the folks who kind of wanted to hear some more of that, we'll give you a little bit of that right there. By the way, it's around the Doghouse, delivered today by our friends at Marco's Pizza. You're getting ready for a great weekend. You can make it even better with some great tasting pizza from our friends at Marco's Pizza. It's baked in a 450-degree oven. It's delivered to you contactless, touchless. After that, you can get the original, pizza. You can get the pizza bowl, which is essentially the great same pizza flavor without the crust for a lot of you who kind of like that. Also, great specials right now too. You can get a large specialty pizza. We've been talking about these specialty pizzas for a while. You can get a large specialty pizza for just $13.99. Order today through the Marco's app or online at marcos.com. And you can check all of that out. Happy to have Marco's Pizza with us as a part of Around the Doghouse here today. All right, we are very busy on the show. It is former Georgia quarterback David Greene. Before we're done, we'll talk to him about the debut for JT Daniels, at least the expected debut for Daniels. We'll do that here coming up in just a moment. But for now, aftermath of Smile Mondon and everything else involving UGA recruiting, let's talk to Jeff Sentel on the road, assisted by AAA. And we'll get Jeff here coming up in just a moment. All right, so let's see how everybody's doing. Yeah, so getting ready for the game on Saturday. Obviously looking forward to it. The debut of JT Daniels is incredibly exciting there. But as Dave Neal reminded us, and as we kind of said off the top when you think about some of the stuff that Nick Saban said, that this is a game on Saturday that's not just about Georgia's offense, JT Daniels, how much they can put up. They will get some resistance on the other side from Mississippi State. And for Georgia, I think a very interesting challenge all the way around here to find out, can this Georgia team bounce back and play better defensively? We're seeing a Mississippi State offense that has not moved the ball very much against anybody. But can Georgia bounce back, play better defensively after really not showing up in the bigger games this team has played thus far this season? So there is a lot to consider on that side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. The side of the ball for both teams has probably gotten less attention, just understandably given Leach's track record, given what Georgia's trying to change and maintain and do here. So a chance to pay some pretty close attention to all of that. So we'll look forward to that for Saturday. And I said before, we'll get David Greene here coming up in just a minute, too. While looks like we have a little bit of time, I'll pop over and get a few comments, and we'll fill the time that way before Jeff is ready to rock and roll and be with us here today. Hope all of you are getting ready for a great weekend and ready to have some fun, and we appreciate you allowing us to do that with you here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger here today on the Facebook side of things for a moment. Let's get a few comments over here, and we'll get Jeff after that. Let's hear a few more. Michael Webb says, just in time to hear Jeff Sentel. Yeah, hopefully you get a chance to hear Jeff here in just a couple moments. Michael Webb, appreciate you being here on the show today. Let's see what else is going on. Michael Edwards says good defenses eventually get worn down. The offense has to help the defense at some point. That's exactly right. You can't be defense alone, and just the way in which the game works, if you're a high-powered offense, you're going to keep trying to hit explosive plays over and over and over again. Eventually, you hit a couple of those, that completely changes the complexion of the game. That's absolutely true. That's why we said before that great defense still matters as long as you define great defense as being disruptive. You're not just preventing someone from doing something. You yourself are trying to do something. You're trying to get the sack that can turn into the fumble that can be the extra possession your offense needs. You're trying to get the pass broken up that can turn into an interception that can be the kind of moment that changes the game. You're not trying to be a defense that prevents things from happening. You're trying to be a defense that makes things from happening. And so, yes, the bottom line is games today will be higher scoring. No defense in big games against great offenses is pitching a shutout or really anything anywhere close to that. That's not really what's going to happen anymore. But you do have the chance. To make the big play when you have to, and making the big play when you have to, producing the kind of superstar players who are capable of doing that. That is what defense is in 2020, and that's how it still can be great. So we'll talk more about that before we're done. For now, let's do the UGA recruiting stuff as promised. He is ready to go. It's On the Road, assisted by AAA with Jeff Sentel.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
So we'll bring in Jeff Sentel here on the road, assisted by AAA. We were having some fun with the Smile Mondin announcement here just a couple of minutes ago. Jeff, I don't know how much of that you got to hear, but some people had told me that I almost came close to giving the full-on chortle, the thing that a lot of folks still give me grief for from a couple years ago, that I almost came close to doing that with Smile Mondin. It certainly was an entertaining day for Mondin to lift up the hat, reveal the second Georgia hat. I thought the theatrics around that were really all pretty good, and I thought I was pretty entertained by all of that.
Brendan, I think the world needs to know this, and good morning, everybody. I think they need to know. Everybody knows who your first most if you wanted to give it, you're the Romanian judge and you wanted to give it a 10.0. We know it would have been Florida for that with a 10.0. What's the second team you would have loved to seen him pull the hat underneath the hat from that? Which one is the second one of those you'd like to seen him kind of twist the knife a little bit there for?
So obviously, I am not always as classy as maybe I could be. So I'd love nothing more than to twist the knife for Auburn, Tennessee, and things like that. The other schools have been more connected to Mondin. But the one thing that I did say on the broadcast, and you did not hear this at the time, is that I actually appreciate the fact that Mondin didn't want to intentionally troll one of the schools that he was connected to, because there's a reason those, Tennessee and Auburn, maybe more so, there's a reason those schools were mentioned in Mondin's recruitment. He probably really liked them, liked the assistant coaches there, didn't want to intentionally troll those programs. Choosing to troll a program like LSU that no one thought he was going to go to. I'm guessing the LSU coaches themselves weren't even watching the streaming video on Saturday. They knew they weren't truly in the running. That's sort of a safe school for Mondin to troll. There was no connection there whatsoever. It's actually a little bit of a classy moment for Mondin to pick the team to troll that was never really in it for him anyway. It's just kind of a safe way to make things entertaining for UGA fans. So I'll give Mondin a little bit of credit for that.
I would just say, that's a good way to look at it, Brendan. I would just say, this is 2020, so anything can happen, but he'd never visited LSU. So if he, even in pre-COVID times, never checked out LSU, and he would have chosen a school like LSU, that would have been one of those, I don't know, Mystery Science 3000 type thing, Mystery Science Theater 3000 type things for me, because I just don't see how that happens in this day and age. And you've got, and a lot of people wonder about this because Florida did take a pretty good swing and a miss here for Mondon. Now, they weren't like, the second choice, and then Mondon even rattled off for me after his decision. He said Georgia was an early leader, and then it was a little bit of Auburn, and then Tennessee, and then Auburn, and then back to Georgia. Never really mentioned Florida as that number one or number two school to me. And then Christian Robinson, everybody remember him, number 45 from his time at Georgia, probably one of the best recruiters on the Florida staff. He was the coach at Florida that built a pretty decent relationship with Schmile Mondon, but now, like the puns have circulated across DawgNation, everybody was smiling for Schmile Mondon, and just a unique recruitment. He told me if things might have been different if he had gotten to take that first Oklahoma visit. He did it in honor of his 87-year-old grandmother. It was his birthday. She's still in West Africa in the Ivory Coast. So now if there's anybody that wants to show up on the DawgNation forum with a handle Ivory Coast dog or something like that.
Listen, Ivory Coast is a little bit of a soccer power on the Dark Continent. Ivory Coast got a little bit of an athletic history.
He's never been there, but his family's from there. I mean, really interesting family. He's got an older sister that is basically his best friend. She goes to Georgia State. She helped him write his speech. It's funny, Brandon, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's this year, but this is a guy, top 10 recruit, number 2 linebacker on the composite, number 1 linebacker total outside or inside for 24/7 Sports. Him choosing Georgia, and everybody I was trying to figure out, because I said on the forum, I said, like, hey, guys, what's the deal? Why is there more juice? Is it just the eclipse of the season and the quarterback woes or whatever? And I guess everybody's not reading their daily DawgNation or listening to you all the time, but they were thinking he was out for his freshman year because of the knee injury, when really, as it's been relayed to me, it's a meniscus cleanup, and he might not be 100% ready to go in the first week of January when he shows up at Georgia, but I think he'll be 85-90% able to participate in a lot of that off-season work.
Yeah, so I think that's really exciting and fun to look forward to. By the way, speaking of exciting, this is a normal weekend and a normal year where getting close to the early signing period and getting close to everything that goes along with that, you might expect to have a lot of visitors, maybe in some cases official visitors. We've seen a lot of that on game weekends recently for Georgia. This year is different. You can't have 93,000 people in the stadium. There's a dead period for recruiting, so Georgia can't, host these visitors officially or unofficially or anything else. Any chance we still see some top prospects find their way in between the hedges on Saturday?
Yeah, Brandon, I think so. They'll have to buy tickets, of course, and get in. I don't know what the StubHub rates are, I don't know what those popular, well-frequented, well-traveled online ticketbroker.com sites are putting that Mississippi State ticket up for. But I know for a fact, I know at least a collection of key 2022 names for Georgia should be in the building, or should at least be in Athenstown this weekend. And 2023, you see some more matriculation there. It's just different, Brandon. This could be one of 2 weekends where Georgia has to get Donovan Edwards and his family down from Michigan. I think if that visit happens, then maybe that door creaks open a little bit, where you still hear a lot of Notre Dame now. You hear a lot of Michigan still, even though that program is on kind of bended knee right now. The thing to think about for me when you think about this weekend, Brandon, is let's just all imagine that this was a normal recruiting cycle, normal visits, normal everything. This wouldn't be the close Georgia wants. Their final 2 home games are Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, and that's when they want to land a lot of those official visitors or unofficial visitors. I mean, really, Brandon, the meat of the Georgia recruiting cycle in terms of having guys on campus for visits on game days, I think that would have been accomplished early with the Auburn and Tennessee games.
Yes, so we'll obviously keep our ear close to the ground, forum.dawgnation.com, as those folks pop up. Maybe we'll get some photographic evidence that they are there. We're talking to Jeff Sentel here on the road, assisted by AAA with Jeff Sentel. And, of course, when you think about AAA, you do think about the legendary roadside assistance. My family and I, we've loved being AAA members for years and years and years. I think that's dating back to 2004. We've been AAA members. So when you think about AAA, that's what you think about. But you should also think about life insurance as well, because if you're in charge of taking care of a family, life insurance is a really important thing for you, because that's how you take care of your family even after you're gone. And AAA can provide you some great life insurance options options coupled with different ways for you to get in touch. If you're seeing on the screen, you can see this for yourself. 866-695-0222. That's 866-695-0222. You can go to AAA.com/life, or you can just stop by your local AAA office and talk to them there. There's a lot of great AAA life insurance options, and you have a chance to check a lot of that out. Jeff, yesterday we had some fun, and you tweeted this video out this week. Lavassier Carroll, Georgia running back commit, IMG Academy player. He was kind of giving some grief to Xavier Sorey, another great linebacker. Georgia gets the 5-star linebacker Smile Mondon this week, and a lot of Georgia fans kind of curious as to who's next. Well, Carroll weighed in to say that he thinks that Sorey will be next. I don't know if Carroll will be proven right on that, but a lot of Georgia fans certainly love the idea that Carroll continues to be a very aggressive recruiter on behalf of UGA.
Yeah, Lavassier is kind of one of those down low-key OGs for the class, and he's in fertile territory there in Florida where he's intersecting with a lot of guys. So here's the thing to look for. Xavier Sorey, is he going to make his decision during the early signing period, before the early signing period? I would say yes. He's going to make his decision by the early signing period. He's going to enroll early at the school of his choice. That's what IMG does. It's kind of a thoroughfare for those early entries to get to major college football. It's kind of a situation where Marlon Dean is there, Lavassier Carroll is there, and then you've got Xavier Sorey Jr. there that's been there for this season. He's been playing for like the last 5 or 6 weeks now. Xavier and Lavassier are also very tight, but Xavier, should that domino fall Georgia's way, I still think it's Florida, Georgia, Alabama there. Those are the 3 schools there. Anything else would be those, nesting doll type troll doll hats on the table that, Brandon's got in my mind, in my vernacular right now, is the classy way to troll somebody is to do something with one of those other two hats. But for me, he's connected to Terrion Arnold. Those 2 guys talk about package deals a lot. I normally don't subscribe to those theories, but you hear that, and there's some weight to that with both Xavier Sorey and Terrion Arnold and Mason Smith and Corey Foreman. So with Xavier falls Georgia's way, I think all of a sudden things get really interesting for Georgia and Terrion Arnold, who has told me a couple times now that he wants to take his decision all the way to February, to that traditional National Signing Day. And maybe, Brandon, you got a chortle left, chortle-worthy folks left on the radar for Georgia. One would be Terrion Arnold, one would be Xavier Sorey, one would be Mason Smith, and then one would be Corey Foreman. Brandon, I don't know if Nyland Green maybe, or maybe Donovan Edwards maybe would classify as a chortle. I'd love for you to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I'll definitely give you a chortle for both Green and Edwards and all the other names you mentioned there as well. And with those names in mind, let me kind of finish up with this, because speaking of package deals, it's one of the most common questions I've been getting over the last couple of days. There's been some kind of turmoil at LSU. Some of it's on-field. Tigers haven't been very good this year as defending national champions. Some of this is off-field. There was a unpleasant report by USA Today. I think we're still sifting through the details on some of that. But, certainly the reaction to it has been negative around LSU, including some elected officials there in the state of Louisiana. How much do you think this could hurt LSU's recruiting momentum? And for guys on the open market like Mason Smith, who is from the boot there, and for Corey Foreman, who certainly seemed to be swayed by a recent visit he took to Baton Rouge, how much does some negative drama around LSU potentially work to Georgia's benefit when it comes to Smith and Foreman on the recruiting trail?
So I think the thing with Foreman that's important is to get him on campus again, get him with one of those faux visits again with Brock Vandegrift and others. I think that's important. It seems like every one of his recruiting visits, he gets very impressionable visits. He has a lot of visit highs. I think with Corey and Mason, Mason's a guy to me that is almost doing everything he can to look and see what else is out there rather than the obvious with everybody telling him to go to LSU. And again, I kind of hold back to a couple of tenets. The things that make it hard for somebody to choose LSU, even when all the ducks in a row and all the programs surging forward at full strength without negative on-field play, negative off-the-field discussions, even when all those things are happening, it still is very hard to pull away from LSU's lure for an in-state prospect. But you got to remember with Mason, this is going to be what people roll their eyes and say, oh gosh, here goes Jeff and DawgNation giving us hope where hope should not be shining through here. I still think there's hope. I still cling to those stories about Mason Smith. Seems like he's wearing the Georgia jersey all the time for photo ops these days, or at least half the time. And he was the guy that revived the Flames to begin with Georgia when Georgia had kind of waved the white flag on his recruiting about 10, 11 months ago. Those are things that stand out. And along with the fact that he's told me before that he's not the type of guy that's going to do what everyone expects him to do. He's going to do his own thing. So, it's funny. Mason Smith took a dip a little bit in the recent recruiting rankings. I think Corey Foreman dropped a couple of notches too, Brandon. The one thing I wanted to share for everybody on your program today is Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins took a huge jump. Also another huge jump was Kamari Lassiter, who picked up his 4th star out of Tuscaloosa. Now he's the number 14 quarterback corner in the country on 24/7 Sports. But to go back to Dawkins, who's been dominating, man, who's kind of fixed a lot of the not-so-pristine elements of his game from his junior year to his senior year. Man, he's been dominating with like 4 sack games, 5, 6, 7, 8 tackle for loss games for Gaffney High School. And that's a pretty big boy program in the state of South Carolina. And 24/7 Sports rewarded that on-field play. Brandon, they moved him up to number 2 overall nationally as the nation's number 2 defensive tackle. Now, that's in Jalen Carter, Trayvon Walker type territory there for Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, and he's now the number 20 overall prospect. And while we're thinking about big jumps, man, I got to bring up the name Terrion Arnold again. Terrion Arnold went up to the nation's number 1 safety now for 24/7 Sports, and for them, he is now a top 30 overall prospect. And in our mind's eye, that's where we've kind of seen Terrion Arnold for all this time.
Jeff, great stuff. Thanks for being here on the road, assisted by AAA. We're going to look forward to speaking to you again, obviously very soon. I know you got some vacation time coming up here, too, so we'll let you enjoy that. But thanks for the update on UGA recruiting. It's always fun to talk to you as we're on the road, assisted by AAA.
Hey, guys, great being with everybody today. Have a great weekend. Have a great Mississippi State game, and hopefully a very good Thanksgiving week as well.
Thank you, Jeff.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
So good stuff from Jeff Sentel there. We appreciate him on the road, assisted by AAA. Don't forget, a couple of minutes' time, we're going to welcome in former Georgia quarterback David Greene. Looking forward to that conversation as we're expecting JT Daniels to make his debut, talking to a great former Georgia quarterback about someone who might also one day be viewed as a great former Georgia quarterback. It's kind of a nice thing to be able to do here on this Friday. DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger. Appreciate all of you being with us. Also, don't forget this, as you head towards the weekend, great opportunity to enjoy yourself some Classic City Lager. If you can't be in Athens for the game on Saturday, it's fun to get a taste of Athens wherever you are, because whichever retailer you enjoy shopping at, you can get those 6 and 12-pack cans of Classic City Lager all year round. It's a lager-style beer, which means it's a lighter tasting beer, but it's got great flavor. Crisp flavor, a lot of fun. Check out some Classic City Lager. It's good, cold beer. It's from our friends at Creature Comforts Brewing Company. Make sure you check that out today. And by the way, a great way to go with your Thanksgiving get-togethers there as well, for those of you who are doing that. All right, busy weekend in the SEC. We talked yesterday a good bit about the LSU-Arkansas game. I think it's a fascinating game in the league. I was a little concerned about some of the stuff that Sam Pittman said about would the game even take place, given some of the coronavirus testing stuff that's going on. I guess late breaking here the last couple of minutes, it does sound like you're in good shape for LSU and Arkansas, or at least that's the appearance right now. That's good news, because I do think that can be a really fun game. As far as other big games in the SEC on Saturday, I think it's very interesting to see how much Florida is able to maintain what has been just and I hate to say this because y'all know I don't like the Gators, but a very impressive run for the Florida team offensively as of late, and it's really contributed to easy wins. I mean, this is the Florida team that's 7-2-1 against the spread in its last 10, 11-4-1 against the spread in its last 15. They are really coasting right now to easy wins, and they're using offense to do that. So they're on the road against Vanderbilt on Saturday. Vanderbilt's actually covered 2 straight, but the last time Vanderbilt played at home, they got blown out by Ole Miss. My expectation is that Florida also blows them out again on this particular Saturday, and I don't like the idea of that, but right now that just seems to be kind of where we're going on all of this. I'm interested in Tennessee going to Auburn on Saturday. This has been painted as a little bit of a revenge game because the last time that Tennessee was here, they won. I think it was 2018. That's not as interesting for me on that. What's a little more interesting for me is just how good Auburn has kind of been at home, maybe even since the Tennessee game in 2018 when a bad Vols team won there in, as they like to call it, the loveliest village on the plains. Auburn's actually covered in 9 of its last 11 at home. This is a team that's been really good at Jordan-Hare Stadium. One of the rare examples of a non-cover was the Georgia game last year when Georgia found a way to get the win and even preserve the cover. Other than that, Tigers have really been kind of getting it done at home here this year, last couple of years. This is also a team that has seemingly righted itself after a couple of ugly performances early in the season, maybe saved officiating-wise against Arkansas. So paying attention to Auburn hosting Tennessee on Saturday. I'm cheering for Mike Bobo a little bit on Saturday as well. Looking forward to the possibility that he gets a win as interim coach against Missouri. I don't think it'd be impossible for this to take place. You look at Missouri the last couple of times they've been on the road. They have not performed well. Awful against Florida. Really, people forget this, but Missouri, who's won 3 times at home this year, also got blown out against Tennessee early in the season. I actually expect South Carolina to win on Saturday, and I'd love to see Mike Bobo go out there and be able to get that done. A couple other things here very quick. Bama hosts Kentucky on Saturday, 30-point favorite in this game. I think one of the interesting things is with Alabama not playing last Saturday, it seems like Kyle Trask got a lot more Heisman love as of late. I wonder if Mac Jones can do something on Saturday against Kentucky to remind them and everyone that he's supposed to be a part of that Heisman conversation. I think that could be an interesting thing to see. And then finally, there is this. As you head towards the weekend outside the SEC, 3 big top 25 matchups involving non-SEC teams on Saturday. Indiana in the top 10 gets a chance against Ohio State. I don't expect that to be close. I do think Wisconsin going to Northwestern could be a little bit more fun. Wisconsin hasn't played a ton of football already this season. They've had 2 games canceled. But offensively, they can actually be a pretty fun team to watch. Wildcats have been pretty good defensively. And then the Bedlam rivalry, Oklahoma hosting Oklahoma State. Really, both these teams, the winner of this game could still have an outside track of making the college football playoff. But we'll have to see how all of that works out. On the outside looking in for the most part, but we'll pay attention to that as we head towards Saturday, and we'll get ready to wrap that up, make that your SEC through, and get ready to welcome in David Greene, the former Georgia quarterback, who is signing autographs this Saturday as a part of the UGA bookstore. And David also good enough to join us here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger right now. David, welcome back to the program. I certainly appreciate you being with us. It's always fun to get a chance to talk to you, and I know that you're like a lot of us, just looking forward to seeing Georgia football again on Saturday after missing last week's game because of the coronavirus cases in Missouri. Kind of nice to have the Dogs back on the field on Saturday. I'm sure you're as excited about that as anybody is.
Well, I am. Look, anytime we can see the Dogs play on the weekend, it's a good weekend. And I think, if anything, we want to see these kids play again after the way things looked against Florida. So I know the kids are probably itching to get back out there and play again. But if you look at it, it probably was not a bad thing that it gave us an extra week to try to heal up a little bit. I can't remember a time in recent history we've been this beat up as we are. If you look at the guys that were on the field for the Florida game, it was a lot different than the guys that were on the field for the Alabama game.
What do you think it's going to be like for them? I know you probably experienced it in your own career as well. Georgia has not played a home game since October 10th. It's been a long time since Georgia has been in a stadium being cheered by its own fans and getting a chance to, just feel. It's not going to be 93,000, of course, but it's still back being at home. What's it like to come back home after being gone for a real long time and having a bunch of folks booing you, all of a sudden to be able to be back and have some fans cheering for you again?
Yeah, well, look, anytime you get a chance to play in Sanford Stadium, it's a good day, too. I mean, what an incredible place to play. Obviously, the atmosphere is different this year than it is in years past just because the number of people that can be there. But obviously, all the guys are familiar with the stadium. It's good not having to get on planes and fly out and, stay in these hotel rooms. It's something more familiar when you're at home. So, I know the kids are excited about that. I'm just excited about to get the opportunity to play. I tell you, it's amazing, Brandon. It's been a crazy year, but the weather this year has been one of the few bright spots of the 2020 year. And you look at this fall, the weather's just been fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You always kind of appreciate that. And I think this is a year in which we're all looking for as many bright spots as we're able to find. Let me ask you this, David. A lot of folks are curious about your opinion. The expectation is we may see JT Daniels, a quarterback, on Saturday. That hasn't been officially announced by Kirby Smart, but there's a lot of chatter that would lead you to believe that happens. How much do you know about Daniels? Obviously, you haven't seen him play. Now does have, at least in a Georgia uniform. But what would be your expectations for a former 5-star, former starter at USC, transferring in, overcoming, it seems, a pretty significant knee injury? If he does play on Saturday, what would you expect?
Well, that's a great question. Here's what I'd hope for is I just want to see overall as an offense, how does the offense move when he's in a game? Because the one thing that's pretty interesting about quarterbacks and championship type quarterbacks kind of raises the whole confidence of the team around him, not even just offensively, defensively, and the whole deal. He's got a big arm. He has showed in the past his mobility. That's the one thing, to me, the biggest question mark, is how confident is he with that knee, because I think that's been the one thing, that has probably held him out to this point, was just, the mobility in his knee and, healing up after that knee surgery. So as a kid that can move pretty well, I'll be curious to see kind of confidence he has on that plant leg. And but hopefully he's going to be out there firing the football, distributing the ball to the playmakers, and hopefully it's just, when he steps in, hopefully it's just going to be a fun offense to watch, that you feel like when this kid's in a game, defense is kind of on their heels going, we better watch out.
There's also been some chatter of the possibility that Georgia might wear black jerseys on Saturday. When you played at Georgia, that's not something you got a chance to do. As a former player, though, how much fun is it for you to see Georgia occasionally kind of break out the alternate? It's not a given they're going to do this, but a lot of fans are hoping that they will. How much have you appreciated the black jerseys in the past? And I guess would you have liked a chance to wear those back when you were a player?
Well, I tell you what, it looks good. I mean, when you wear the black jersey, red helmet, silver breeches, that is a good look. Now, I wasn't, look, some of the guys, they get hung up on that whole, look good, play good mentality. And most of the guys used to rag me because I had the long sleeve jersey, and they're like, Greene, are you really going to go out there looking like that? But so I didn't really care about the look quite as much as some of the other guys. But the black jerseys, red helmets, and the gray pants that's a very sharp looking uniform. And now, does it really have an impact in the game and get people all fired up?
Sure.
It probably does for the first, couple of plays, and after that, it's just football.
Well, speaking of looking good and some UGA apparel, obviously the UGA bookstore gives you a chance to do that. Right there on the first floor, they are just loaded with all the Nike, the Vineyard Vines, and Tommy Bahama, Peter Millar, all the great UGA apparel. And this Saturday, it's also going to be fun as well. David, you're going to be a part of an autograph signing there. The legendary former Georgia coach Vince Dooley going to be signing some of his books too. 5 to 7, this is going to happen. UGA bookstore right there next to the Tate Student Center, right there next to Sanford Stadium really as well. A really cool spot to be in. And David, I know you're looking forward to getting a chance to hang out with some UGA fans and sign some autographs, tell some old stories, and just see the folks who are in town for Georgia and Mississippi State. I'm sure that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, I can't wait. Look, and it's probably like a lot of folks, when you go to the Georgia game and you go in the bookstore, that's a dangerous place. I mean, I could spend my paycheck in that store.
Oh, yeah.
Because I like a little bit of everything that's in there. So it's good to see some old friends that I'll see over there. Howard Taylor, who runs the bookstore over there, has done a fantastic job and been a friend for a long time. It's always good to see Coach Dooley. And anytime you can be in Athens on a game day, it's a good day, and look forward to seeing the fans.
Well, David, we really appreciate you being here on DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger today. Thanks so much for your time, and we're looking forward. I know a lot of folks are looking forward to seeing you on Saturday at the UGA bookstore, so enjoy that. Enjoy the football here this weekend, and we'll look forward to getting a chance to also check back in with you again very soon, too.
All right, Brandon. Appreciate you, buddy. Have a good weekend.
Good stuff. All right, really fun there from David Greene, and a great way to kind of close out our week. And obviously, before we go, and if you want to, we can bring the music down on this just a little bit. There was sad news around Georgia yesterday with Jake Scott, legendary former player at Georgia and a great NFL player as well for the Miami Dolphins. He passed away yesterday, former Super Bowl MVP, a very interesting character. The legendary story about him was that he once drove a motorcycle to the top of Stegman Coliseum because the building has those ramps that would enable you to potentially be able to do that. They have gates there now that kind of prevents that from happening, but that's one of the things that Scott was famous for doing. And he had a lot of stories like that. Very colorful guy, great football player, and obviously our prayers go out to the family of Jake Scott, the entire Georgia football community on the passing of one of the great players to ever play at this school. And, I'm always a big believer. These guys that played were great, pre-Herschel Walker. It's important for us to kind of remember them because Scott's football legacy is a significant one. So we'll honor him today at the close of our show and see you Monday on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. And on video. Time now for our R.S. Andrews cool down, air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric. You can trust R.S. Andrews to do all of that for you. And they'll do it all for us here today. And we'll get a few comments. Check them out online, rsandrews.com. We'll go a little longer today. I know we were really short yesterday, so let's do about 10 minutes worth here. and then we will rock and roll and get out. Jan Armistead says, I love Jake. Watched him play all of his games, and I'm glad to hear that. As I said before, I think that the Herschel Walker history is so significant around Georgia football. And why would it not be? I'm a believer that Herschel's probably the greatest college player of all time. So therefore, he is going to have an outsized presence when it comes to the memories of a player at Georgia. That's just what kind of Walker's going to bring to the table. But I do think it's important for us to also think back to the guys who played prior to that and the things that made them great. And Scott would be one of those guys. This is not some body that you just, kind of overstate, exaggerate. I mean, this is a guy who played on the 72 Dolphins, been a Super Bowl MVP. This is a guy that 72 Dolphins, of course, were the undefeated team in the NFL. They're still the only team to make it through an entire season, including winning the Super Bowl as an undefeated team. This, that's a big legacy. That's a big football heritage. And remembering those guys is important. I'll give you a quick comparison here. When the Braves got good in the early 90s, and all those Hall of Famers kind of came through there. Bobby Cox, Hall of Fame manager, Hall of Fame pitchers like John Smoltz and Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine, Chipper Jones. That era of Braves baseball kind of swallowed up the rest of Braves history. And for a while, there was no remembrance of anything that happened prior to that. But in latter years, I do think the Braves have done a better job of now looking back at the legacy of Dale Murphy, someone who predated the 91 worst of first team that made the World Series. And, Murphy had a great career, 2 MVPs, back-to-back in 82 and 83. That's a great legacy, just very, very close to a Hall of Fame career. And now I think there's additional appreciation for Dale Murphy that more time has passed than maybe existed back in the 90s because the Braves are going through the greatest era in the history of the organization. And so now, these years after Herschel Walker, it might be time to kind of go back and help retell some of the stories of Georgia football prior to that. I think there's more we could, learn and appreciate about, guys that people have at least heard of, Frank Sequich, Charlie Trippi. I think there are more stories that could be told there. I would say that one of the ways in which Georgia kind of falls short a little bit is there's not as much obvious appreciation for history. There's not as much obvious connection to history and attempts being made to make sure that history stays present tense and relevant for younger fans. I think you've got to work to do that. It's not going to happen on its own because young people are interested in things that happen in their era. So making them notice and care about and be aware of, guys who played in previous eras. I think that's something that Georgia football needs to do the hard work to make sure that it's able to do. Keith Vold says, I was at Georgia when Jake drove that motorcycle up the Coliseum, then they put up those rails. So when I was a kid, and I certainly didn't drive a motorcycle up there, but when I was like a young child, I would try to walk up the rail as far as I could. We'd go to basketball games, things like that, and I'd try to see how far up the rail I could walk before I'd get yelled at and told to get down. Then I'd slide down. There was like that white chalky paint. That paint on that rail is on those, ramps that go up the Coliseum, and who knows why they designed it this way. But those ramps had this white chalky paint. It would get all over your jeans and things like that. So, yeah, I have a lot of memories of that. Hugh Nash says we have to treat the rest of this season as our preseason, have a quarterback ready for game 1. I would kind of agree with that, Hugh. I think a lot of this is trying to decide what you have from a veteran standpoint as a quarterback. I mean, I think that Brock Vandagriff might be the kind of quarterback who's capable of competing some next season. I certainly wouldn't predict him to win the quarterback job. I'm not going to make any prediction on that moving forward. I don't think, anyway. At least in the immediate present, I don't have any plans to. So, yeah, that's a quarterback that I think Vandagriff could potentially compete, but having another viable option so you're not hoping, you're not in a position where you have to be saved by Vandagriff. In other words, if it's not Vandagriff who's ready to go as a true freshman, then you don't have any quarterback. I think you want to avoid that if you all possibly can. So yeah, establishing who your best veteran quarterback is right now. By veteran, I mean people who aren't fresh out of high school. I think that is important, and it would stand to reason that JT Daniels would have the inside track on being that guy because he's got the experience before. He started at USC. So, yeah, I think all of that's probably really important. Tennille Calvino, always nice to have Tennille checking in on the show today. Let me get some YouTube comments. I don't think I've been on YouTube yet, so let me apologize to them and head over there right now. Always appreciate you being with us. All right, on the YouTube side of things, George says everybody fears the mighty Gators. That's why you're cheering for Alabama now. Listen, George, I don't mind being very honest with you. I don't know that I fear anything, but I'm obviously rooting against Florida. So, yeah, you'll hear me probably make a case for Mac Jones winning the Heisman. I don't know that – I don't really know what I think about the SEC championship game as of yet. I do think that's a game Florida could win. I don't know that I believe they will, but if they do – assuming Texas A&M plays some games again, I'll probably start touting Texas A&M to make the playoff because they did beat Florida head-to-head after all. That would only be fair, we think, around here. So we'll be very transparent with you about that. Light Dog 68 says, don't come here, BA. Brady Pass Management says 52-31 for an SEC championship. That's a very interesting score. Very interesting score. Green Soldier says, I know UF stands a chance against anyone, but Bama seems to be a better version of Florida in all areas. I think tomorrow's a pretty good comparison. We haven't seen Alabama in a couple of weeks. Alabama's playing Alabama's playing the better team, but they're also playing at home. The point spreads are pretty even here, and point spreads are simply a matter of, evaluating expectations. Both teams expected to win by 30 points or more. Let's do a comparison between Alabama and Florida on Saturday. It might be kind of interesting to see, if Florida is truly explosive enough to look more explosive than Alabama on Saturday. Bama playing a far better defense, of course, but they also had to get the benefit of playing at home. So that's a pretty fun comparison. DogFan3, going back to our defensive topic a little earlier, says Azeez Ojulari was leading the SEC in sacks when Davis was on the field. Yeah, and so, I do think you've gotten a little more disruptive version of Georgia this season than maybe you got in 2019. I just don't think that disruption has really existed in the games that have mattered most, and obviously your point about Davis not being there for the Florida game is a pretty important part of that. All right, let's see what else. Trying to see what the rest of the YouTube folks are talking about. Rodney Hewitt says, I'd love to see a throwback uniform that represents the great teams from the 40s. Yeah, some version of that I think can be kind of a lot of fun. And, just doing more. I mean, we've talked about this topic before. Like, I like statues. When I visit another ballpark, things like that, I love to see the statues that are present for those, organizations, even sometimes middling organizations, like Chicago White Sox, for instance, out there in the new Comiskey Park, out there in the outfield, they have a cool bunch of statues. They recognize, they represent the great former players in the history of their organization. Georgia, whether it be statues, whatever else, go to Alabama, they've given a statue to all the coaches that have won national championships, and that's kind of a cool thing. Georgia doesn't have as many national championships. We won't pretend that they do, but there are a lot of great Georgia players, a lot of guys who've gone on to, great things, had great careers, and whether it be a statue or a plaque or whatever else, doing more to honor them would not be necessarily the worst thing in the world. GB2 on the subject of, what has been an unhappy 2020, appreciating Saturday night under the lights. Yeah, listen, those are gifts. You got to love them. You got to appreciate them. I think that's absolutely true. George says Gator Nation doesn't give a damn about what uniform we wear. George, that is a flat lie, because Florida tweets out its uniform combination every single week, and Gators fans are talking about it all the time. Now, you can care about uniforms, you cannot. As far as I do enjoy uniform talk. I don't have a problem with people who do. But don't act like Florida fans are above uniform talk. I see these tweets all the time. Florida makes a huge deal of its uniform combination every single week, and they've worn some of the ugliest things I've ever seen. So I'm not letting you get away with that, George. Now, right now you got scoreboard bragging rights because your team beat Georgia, but you can't flat lie. William Perry calling for Eddie to be freed. I appreciate that, William. Thank you. Michael Porter on George Pickens. Yeah, I do expect Pickens to play on Saturday. I do. Stephen Bozeman on some of the injuries coming back. I mean, like I said, I expect Pickens to be back there playing, but it's still a pretty banged up team. Clearly no Jordan Davis. Look out, guys like that. You're still kind of waiting on them a little bit. All right, what else? Let me go back over to Facebook. We'll get ready to go. Noah Sheldon hoping for 40 points. Yeah, Noah, I'd love to be able to see that too. I would. Chad Buchanan would like to see more to honor the great players. I'd like to see that too. Jan Armistead, Florida, orange is the ugliest color ever. I would agree with you on that. I really would. Matt Talley says leather helmets and all. Didn't a team kind of sort of appropriate a leather helmet on a real college football helmet? Did I see this at one point in time? Somebody kind of made a leather style helmet to go on a modern traditional helmet. It could be kind of a cool look. It could be. I think it'd be kind of a cool look. Somebody the other day sent me like their own kind of, instead of a throwback, it's kind of a faux back. It was kind of a mock-up of a potential throwback style uniform for Georgia. It really kind of reminded me of the 1990 Georgia baseball team, the uniforms they wore with kind of the block G. It was a very cool look, and the coach's gear that he made to go along with it were very cool as well. I'm just kind of an old school guy and stuff like that. I love classic retro stuff. You guys, for the most part, kind of notice this on the show that I, for the most part, kind of stick with a classic look. I don't wear too many new things. Robert Reynolds also wants to see Eddie back. Maybe Eddie will make his return, before the Gator Hater updater. It sounds like a lot of people would like to see Eddie again. So maybe Eddie will make his return here at some point in time. Georgia and Olive, very funny stuff. Tony Henry says, what if Florida gets COVID the week before the SEC championship? I mean, obviously, in Florida's case, at this point in time, it seems like everybody's had it by now. But this is actually a real thing that college football is going to have to deal with, because there really isn't a lot of room to move these games back. And it sounds like on the part of the playoff selection committee, there's not a lot of appetite for doing so. That, the college football playoff has, for instance, that if a team were to not be able to play a game because of COVID, they'd be like pro wrestling, disqualified, and the team that didn't have COVID would move on. So it may get a little cutthroat and cold-hearted here eventually, where there's just not much room left to move these games back for a lot of reasons. You don't want to move too much into the NFL draft season because you're going to have a hard time getting players that want to play. You don't want to move too much into the NFL playoff window, because the whole point of creating a made-for-TV event, it's just less attractive to TV at that point. That if we get into a situation where we're in a postseason and a team is having a hard time, getting players in the field, I don't think there's going to be. I guess who knows what will happen in the actual moment, but I don't know how many available concessions there are going to be for a team that's not able to play, come postseason time. That could be listen, and still my overall opinion remains the same, that you just got to do what you can to get as much football played as possible. But overall, it's going to be a tough situation for the team that's involved if they have to deal with that. Clinton Thrift, hope to see those big talented tight ends get involved. Yeah, I'd love to be able to see that too. Nature Gator likes the idea of disqualifying a team. That's going to be tough if you're the one that gets disqualified, though. For sure. All right. Light Dog 1968 likes the wrestling reference. Yeah, we like that around here, too. That's why we like recruiting theatrics and things like that. Anything that kind of reminds us of professional wrestling, we're usually pretty happy about around here. All right. I really appreciate all of you being with us. Thanks for making DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger, a ton of fun to do. Thanks for hanging out here for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down as well. Somebody said it a little earlier. I think it's true. These types of Saturdays, getting a chance to go enjoy some Georgia football, I think it's an important thing to be able to do. So wherever you are, whoever you're doing it with, make the most of the weekend. Watch some Georgia football. Hopefully we'll get to see a fun show. Maybe some black jerseys, maybe some JT Daniels, maybe a little bit of everything else. Hopefully we'll get a chance to see that and come back and talk about it on Monday here for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. And also for DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. Let me also say this. Check out the AJC, Atlanta News Now, at AJC.com. One of the things I'm really proud about is coming up on Monday, I'm going to actually be doing, you've heard about the community conversations, the video events available on the AJC video channels. For those of you who are running the virtual version of the AJC Peachtree Road Race on Thursday, I'm actually going to be hosting a show on Monday. It's kind of a pregame show for that, giving you both information about how the virtual race is going to go, but also talking to some of the elite runners who'll be competing in the virtual version of the race this year, and just celebrating what has been a great Atlanta tradition and a real institution for our city. So we'll do that on Monday, 5 p.m. on the AJC video channels. And in between now and then, check out AJC.com for your Atlanta News Now, for everything happening in your city, in your state, getting ready for a fun weekend, a lot of Thanksgiving preview stuff in there. AJC.com for a lot of that. All right, check out R.S. Andrews online at rsandrews.com for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. You can find out R.S. Andrews there. If your water heater goes out, in many cases, they can replace it for you the same day, but you've got to find them online at rsandrews.com. You have a great day. We'll see you back here on Monday. DawgNation Daily presented by Kroger. Have a great weekend, everybody. For more DawgNation videos, check out youtube.com/DawgNation.